Well, you join us here at Aston Park Fisheries. We've got Jordan sat behind me fishing. He couldn't resist, couldn't get him off the box, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get Tom behind the camera and I'll talk to you a little bit about my Fish North campaign for 2023. So this is a competition I always look forward to. I absolutely love it and I've had a little bit of success there in the past. Explain the concept a little bit so you understand where I'm coming from. It's a qualifier system, so they have about 12, 15 qualifiers throughout the summer season across quite a few different northern venues. So you've got venues like the Oaks Lakes, Tollerton and Forest Lane Fisheries and a few others. And they're sort of 40 to 60 peg qualifiers, usually 2 or 3 lakes, and you get the winner of each lake go through to the semi-final, which is in September, where 30 anglers compete on the Arena Lake at Forest Lane Fisheries. Fantastic lake, it's absolutely solid with carp, little tiny sort of, the average about 14 ounce to a pound, but there are some bigger stamp ones which are over a pound, which did come to make a big difference in the final, but we'll get on to that. And then obviously the top 15 in the semi-final go on to the final, where there's £12,000 to the winner, £2,000 for second and £1,000 for third. So brilliant competition, really friendly and runs super smooth. Baz Zimmerman does a brilliant job. Can't sort of commend him enough for what he's done with that competition. So definitely get involved, check it out. The campaign this year, I honestly didn't get enough to do. I didn't get enough time to do enough qualifiers for Fish North this year, sadly. I had loads of stuff going on with uni, a few fish show tickets clashed, so I had 2 tickets. The first one was at the Oaks. That didn't go to plan. I'd like to say I didn't draw quite right, I don't think. Wrong end of the lake. I'll not talk too much about that one. But my second qualifier of the year was at Forest Lane, the venue which hosts the final. Brilliant venue, loads of cool different lakes. Obviously, you might have heard of the Vale Lake, which is on site there. Absolutely solid with like barbel, and that's when they've had near £1,000 weights. But that wasn't actually in on this match. I drew the Furlong, which is a long canal style lake. I'll not go too in depth, but essentially I drew peg 29 up the top end of the lake. Decent draw, I think, from what I was told from the locals. I was next to Steve Barrowclough, so we had a little battle. It's basically a sort of 14 metre wide snake lakes, quite a few carp, sort of 2 to 3 pound, and some barbel and small carp, so a bit of a mixture. I wasn't really sure how it was going to fish, to be honest, so I went with a bit of an open mind. I started off slapping across on the pole, literally set my rig like 12 inches, slapped a pellet about, didn't want to feed a bean really, because I was aware that it would fish quite hard, so I basically didn't feed bait all over my peg. I wanted to watch anglers around me, see how I wanted to progress with my match. As it happened, starting across slapping was a brilliant move. Ended up with like 12 to 15 carp in the first 90 minutes, which was a great start. I think I knew I was fishing for around £100, so I thought that's a brilliant start, and I was hoping that my meat short line would come good. I basically had a 3-line attack, meat short on a short kit and a short 4, I think I fished it, just in about 4 foot of water. I was hoping to catch little barbel and stockies there, to be honest, just to sort of rest my cross lines, and an edge line with micros. That didn't come into it, they wouldn't come in the edge on that day. But the short line, actually, when I came off my long line, dropped on it, it was fantastic. Caught carp, barbel, everything you can name it really. It was fantastic. I knew it was going to be a successful day when it goes like that. Them qualifiers tend to go your way. Ended up with £100 and I got through to the semi, so fantastic news, chuffed a bit, second time of asking. So yeah, so that meant fish away all summer, and then when it gets to September I start thinking about Fish North. The fishing obviously changes quite a lot as the sort of year progresses. In September the temperatures change, that's when you can start getting your first cool night, so it makes interesting fishing, and it can change quite a lot, so it can catch you out. But I went for, so with the semi-final coming up for the first week in September, I wanted to leave it till about a week before the semi to go for a practice, and that's what I did. So the first practice match on Arena, I think there's about 10 of us went. I knew it was going to be solid. I mean, this lake, so to sort of explain the venue for the final, it's a round circular lake, similar to the Arena at Cudmore, if any of you know it. It's a bit narrower, so it's around about 17, 18, 19 metres to the island, maybe 20. You'll have to ask one of the locals, I haven't measured it. But yeah, it's a round lake, very fair, it's been cut with a laser, all the pegs are very similar. Of course there's better areas, the fish do tend to sit in certain areas, and the stamp differed quite a lot, which was really interesting. The stocking is dead simple, nothing else other than carp. So the carp are around about 8 ounce to £1.5 pound with the odd 2 pounder mixed amongst them. So really interesting fishing. You have to sort of work out the right depths and the right rigs to be on. So the practice for the semi, I drew on peg 10. Great area of the lake at the time. I felt like I wanted to practice a couple of methods. I knew it was going to be either short or in the edge. These fish are sort of, with them being a small average, you've got to catch a lot of them, and there's a lot of them in there. So there was definitely big weights on the cards, and it turned out to be that exact thing on the final. So I went there with an aim of trying to sort my gear out. I wanted to make sure I had the right elastics, the right hooks, the right floats, and just make sure I was nice and efficient. So I drew peg 10, I caught basically everything in front of me on a short kit. Every peg's different on there, but you want to try and be fishing in the right depth, so it's important to set up a few different rigs. I set up rigs in 18 inches, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot and 5 foot. Certain pegs don't allow you to fish certain rigs, so sometimes the bottom is too like of a steeper slope, so you might have to fish 5 foot and 3 foot, for example, or 6 foot and 4 foot. So you kind of had to play it by ear once you plumbed up your peg, but them short close lines in like 2 foot were really good. So I knew they were probably going to be the most important lines to fish. However, something really interesting about the arena lake is, as the day goes on, the fish progress down the slope and move away from you, and they never come back up, so you can never really have a good finish in the edge. You have to catch all your fish at the start of the match, and at the end, drop down the slope as the day progresses to sort of keep fish coming. That was really important. The anglers who could keep fish coming the longest turned out to do best. So I did fish in the edge that day on the practice. I had one line on the top kit in the edge, plumbed up 2 foot, and then I caught in 2 foot right in front of my keep nets. As it happened, I had a fishing truck all day. They fished a 6¼ hour match, the longest match I've ever fished in my life, I think. I was absolutely dying by the end, but I ended up with 346 carp for 346 pounds and won the practice match, so I was really pleased with that. And then that was the only match I had to practice before the semi-final. On to the semi-final, 30 anglers, a fantastic lineup, so credit to every single one of them that got there, because it's brilliant. It was the scariest lineup I've ever seen in a semi-final or a final. I drew peg 25 in the semi-final. Great area. Some would say I live on that peg. I've drew it, I think, 4 or 5 times in the sort of 10, 11 times I've been to that venue fishing that lake, so can't complain. My drawing arm at Forest Lane always looked after me. Had a nice match. Started short in 2 foot of water, feeding meat, so I didn't mention that. The bait is meat, back to back for me, 6mm meat. I think I fed about 8 tins on the sort of days when it was good. When it's harder on the semi-final, I didn't need to feed as much bait because it dies off quicker, but when it's good for longer, you need to feed more bait. So you're feeding sort of 6 to 10 bits every time. You're literally fishing right in front of your feet, fishing a little float. These are a little munter float from RW. They're brilliant for that style of fishing. These are the floats that I basically used all throughout them sessions when I'm fishing in that shallower water. So when I was fishing in 18 inches and 2 foot and in the edges, I used these. They're a 0.4. They've got a really thick bristle and a fiberglass stem, so they're really strong. And when you're catching 200 fish in a match, you need something that's not going to let you down. Super strong, super thick. You know, that's probably 2.5, 2mm hollow bristle, so you're not going to strike at line bites. Nice and stable. I'll mention the other floats while I'm at it. So when you want to drop into that 3 foot, so as the day goes quieter, as it happened in the semi-final, started in front of my feet in 2 foot of water, feeding meat on the hook. One of these little floats. Just fished a bulk. Size 16 super LWG hook, 0.15 main line, nice and strong, durable tackle. You don't want it letting you down. Started in this, caught 60 fish in the first hour. No, I think it might have been a bit less actually. I think it was around 40 fish, and then the next hour was 30 fish. So the first couple of hours were strong, and I expected that to be the case for everyone, to be honest. And then as the day goes on, it gets worse and worse, and eventually on the semi-final, I didn't actually fish in the edge on the semi. I just wanted to focus on that short line because I know you need to catch your runs of fish while you're there. If you chop and change all the time, it just doesn't, you don't catch as many. That's my opinion anyways. And then when I dropped into 3 foot, I fished one of these, a little carbon bobby float. They're 0.4, so they take plenty of shot. Nice, again, buoyant, hollow bristle, really bright, so you can see them dead easily. That's a 0.4 for fishing 3 and 4 foot deep. And when I fished it and dropped down the slope into sort of 4.5, 5 foot, I used a 0.5, same just a carbon bobby again. I think it's really important to have them different rig setups. So in the semi-final, started close to me. As the session progressed, I'd just drop down the slope into like 3, 4, 5 foot. That's always been the way on there the last couple of years. Throwing meat was brilliant. When the session sort of gets harder, I did decide to pot it just to keep everything a bit tighter. But when I'm fishing my close lines, I just throw my meat. I just think it's quicker. Before I move on to the rest of the campaign, I'll just mention my elastics. I think that's a really, really important part of what I was doing at Forest Lane, because you want to get the fish landed as quick as possible. So I fished 15s and 17s Duraslip in short kits. Some anglers might prefer to use lighter elastic, but for me, I sort of figured out through practice that if I could avoid using a puller kit, then I could catch a few more in the space of time, because when they were there, you had to catch them really quickly. So I just fished 17, on my bagging rigs, I fished 17 Dura slip, nice and heavy. You sort of hook your fish, lift up, and you can just net them without using a puller kit. It's really easy, brilliant elastic. The 15's better if you're fishing for a few less bites, fishing in deeper water. You know, so you don't need to pull the head off at that point. And then, what was I going to say? Just lost my. Yeah, so semi-final, went on to catch 100 fish. I think they're a bit smaller stamp that day, so they weighed 86 pounds, and that was enough for 6th in the match and through to the final. So brilliant result. I was happy with that. Brad Lucas won the match, I think, with 126 pounds, and I was on 25. He was on peg 3 or 4, I think, so a little bit more around the lake, and I felt like that was a better area, and in the final it turned out it was. So maybe there's a few more fish in that half of the lake at the moment. I think that was the case. I had one more practice. I won't go into too much detail because it's very much similar. Short on meat again, a few on meat in the edge on peg 25. This was the week before the final, the same peg as I was during the semi, but it was a lot better. I had 246 pounds and I was second in the match behind Christian Jones. I knew he was going to be a danger man. He had 200 and a high 200, I think. So I was about 20 pound behind him. He caught some shallow in the edge that day, which was interesting. So things like that are great to sort of take note of when you're practicing, but I didn't feel like it was going to come into play on the final, because as the final takes place on the sort of 3rd week in September, which is generally cooling down a little bit. The year before last, it was like the first frost before the final, which changed everything. So I kind of expected that to possibly be the case again. But going into the final, it actually stayed pretty mild. There was a wind blowing, but I expected that not to make too much of a difference because it was warm. I was quite thankful for that because it was blowing right into my face. So going into the final, 15 anglers get through. I'm not going to try and name everyone because I know I'm just going to forget people, so I'm not going to name them, but a really, really high standard of angler again in the final. Christian Jones is, you know, Matty Higgins, who actually turned out to be the winner. Little spoiler there. Loads of great anglers. I drew peg 10. So the night before, Eddie and Kate have a big barbecue at their house, well, a hog roast even. Everyone goes, has a few pints, does the draw. It's a fantastic occasion, absolutely love it every year. Something I always look forward to, probably why I actually want to get to the final the most, because it's really just nicely hosted. Drew peg 10, so, no, not peg 10, peg 11. So next to the peg I had 346 pounds of, so you know what, I was pretty happy. My gut feeling was I was slightly off them, because I felt like the fish were more to my right in peg sort of 3 to 8, that area. But you know what, I couldn't complain. I was right next to where I wanted to be, on the aerator rope. I felt like there's a potential bigger stamp in that area. I think them aerators do hold better stamp fish, so I was kind of hoping that would be on my side. Before I mention what actually happened, the year before, I drew around the other side of the lake. I made the final again, I think that was 2022. Didn't do any good. I think I was 6th or 7th overall, but I had 186 pounds and it was quite cold that day. So I took that into account and thought, well, if that's won last year, the fish are possibly a bit bigger and I was in a lesser area of the lake. So I expected to need about 200 pounds, to be honest. The year before that, the first year I made the final, I ended up 2nd. So behind Andy Bennett that year, but only 100 pounds. So it was much different fishing. It was more shallow fishing then. So the fishing has changed, but I've had a bit of success. I was hoping to go one better this year. I didn't. I ended up 2nd overall in Fish North for the 2nd time. I had 215 pounds, so a brilliant day. And actually, I felt like I wasn't in the race, truthfully. I started my match short in 2 foot of water, right between my feet, and just feeding meat. And I had 60 fish in the first hour, and I felt like I was there or thereabouts, but I did feel like you'd need a few more. So I still, you know, kept my hopes up, kept going. I had 60 fish the 2nd hour, and then after then it sort of petered off, and I had to drop into 3 foot, then drop into 4 foot, and then ended up finishing my match in 5 foot of water, tapping meat in, just to get a few more bites. Ended up with, I think I had 60 fish, and then 30, 40, and 20 in each hour. The edge didn't really come into it. I had quite a lot of reeds in the edge, and it felt like when I was throwing my meat in, the wind was coming in my face, and I couldn't quite be accurate enough with my meat. I didn't feel like it was going to be quick enough, and ended up getting some meat in the reeds, and it was chaos. So I just left that alone, focused on that short line, tried to nurture it, catch little runs of fish. And, you know, I feel like, looking back, if I'd been a bit more positive, because as the day progressed, I felt like I was more behind than I was, and listening to other anglers, like shouting across the lake, oh, I've got this many fish, I've got this many fish, and that definitely played a little part, I think, looking back. And if I'd been a bit more focused, maybe I could have caught a few more, but as it happened, £215, just off the pace behind the man Matt Higgins. He's had £230, so I feel like another 20 fish and that would have been enough for me to win it. Bit gutted, but can't complain. Won £2 in a competition I absolutely love. Massive congratulations to Matt Higgins winning it. £12,000 in his pocket. Well done, sir. And then you've got Christian Jones. Always expected him to be in the top 3. He came third, winning £1. So a lovely little campaign. Honestly, it's a brilliant competition. I think I've covered everything really. You know, the depths of water was really important. The number one thing to remember if you're going to go and try and get in that final, depth of water, being in the right depth at the right time. Don't push down the slope too soon. Catch your runs close into you while you can, because you've got to catch them quick. Make sure your gear's strong line. So I figured at 0.15 or 0.17 hook length was best, just purely because of the strength of your elastic that you get in the fish in quick enough. If you don't catch them fish quick enough in the first hour, you're knackered. So strong gear, be aggressive, feed meat. That was always the best bait. And yeah, I think that kind of concludes it. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of how the campaign went. I'm going to do my very, very best to get in that final again next year, because I absolutely love it. Get plenty of tickets. Go and check out Fish North. You won't regret it. And thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the little catch up. If you did, give us a comment. We'll do some more of them. I know Tom and Jordan have been done a few in the past. I'd love to do a few more. So give us a subscribe, give us a like, give us a comment, and we'll see you in the next one.